My mother excluded my children from the family New Year's trip to protect my brother's peace. She didn't know I owned the luxury cabin she booked online. When they arrived, they found the door locked and me on the porch. The reservation wasn't canceled, it was just under new management. Mine. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The room was spinning. It wasn't a metaphorical spin, either. The fever had been spiking since early Tuesday morning, leaving me tangled in sweat-dampened sheets, staring at the ceiling fan as it blurred into a gray vortex. My doctor had called it severe exhaustion compounded by a viral infection, which was medical speak for you have worked yourself into the ground, Rosie, and now your body is forcing you to stop. I barely had the strength to lift my head, let alone argue, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a photo of my mother, Brenda. Usually, a call from her meant a checklist of demands or a monologue about her garden club drama, but today, in my weakened state, I hoped it might be a check-in. Maybe she had heard from my ex-husband that I was down for the count. Maybe she was calling to offer to pick up Kevin and Maya from school so I could sleep. I swiped answer and put it on speaker, letting the phone rest on the pillow next to my ear. "Hey, Mom," I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm not feeling great today, actually. I think I caught that bug going around." There was a pause on the other end, but not the concerned kind. It was the impatient silence of someone who hadn't really listened to what I said. "Oh, drink some tea, Rosie, you'll be fine." Brenda's voice was sharp, clear, and completely devoid of sympathy. "Listen, I don't have much time, I'm packing. I just wanted to give you a heads up about New Year's." I blinked, trying to focus. New Year's was 3 days away. We usually did a potluck at our house. A chaotic, loud, messy affair with the kids running around and lukewarm casserole. It wasn't glamorous, but it was tradition. "Right," I managed. "What time do you want us there? I should be better by then. I can still make the spinach dip." No, she interrupted, a nervous little laugh bubbling up. "That's what I'm calling about. We aren't doing the house thing this year. It's just become too much work for me, you know? Cleaning up after everyone, the noise. It's exhausting." "Okay," I said, confusion cutting through the brain fog. "So, are we going out, or did you want to do it at my place?" "Actually," she said, and I could hear the sound of a zipper closing in the background. She was actively packing while breaking this to me. "Patrick, Laura, and I booked a little getaway. A private cabin retreat up north, just for a few days to recharge." I lay there, the silence stretching out. Patrick, my younger brother, Laura, his wife, and Mom. "Oh," I said, the hurt blooming in my chest, hot and sharp. I didn't know. Is there room for us? I can book a separate room nearby if the cabin is full. The kids would love to see snow." "Rosie, stop," Brenda sighed, the tone shifting to that familiar, condescending lecture she used when I was a teenager. "That's the thing, it's a very curated space. High-end, lots of glass, expensive art. It's really not suitable for children. And honestly, Patrick has had such a hard year with his job. He needs quiet, absolute quiet. There just isn't enough room for your little ones, not in the house and certainly not in the vibe we're going for." My heart hammered against my ribs, making my head throb harder. "You're going on a family vacation without me, without your grandchildren, because Patrick needs quiet." "It's not without family," she corrected, defensive now. "It's just a different configuration. Patrick deserves something peaceful this year. You know how high-strung he gets. Kevin and Maya are lovely, but they are energetic. Laura just doesn't think she can handle the chaos right now." "Laura thinks," I whispered. "We leave in the morning," Brenda rushed on, clearly wanting to end the conversation now that the bomb had been dropped. "We'll be back on the 2nd. We can exchange gifts then. Get some rest, Rosie. You sound terrible." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the disconnect tone buzzing in the air. I was sick, I was alone, and my own mother had just told me that my children, her grandchildren, were essentially debris that needed to be cleared away so her golden son could have a silent holiday. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging, but beneath the sorrow, something else began to coil in my gut. A cold, hard stone of realization. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. I spent the next hour drifting in and out of a feverish doze, the sea. Conversation replaying in my mind on a loop. Not enough room for your little ones. Patrick deserves peace. Around noon, I forced myself to sit up. I needed water. I needed to check on Kevin and Maya, who were currently downstairs with the nanny I'd hurriedly hired when the fever spiked. As I reached for my glass, my phone pinged again. It was a text from Brenda. Forwarded message, booking confirmation, PDF subject. Your stay at the Summit Luxury Alpine Retreat attached is the itinerary for your brother, Laura, and me so you know where we are in case of emergencies. Don't worry about us. See you next year. Zoe, Mom. My hand froze midair. The Summit. I stared at the name, waiting for the hallucination to pass. Maybe the fever was making me see things. I opened the PDF, my thumb trembling slightly against the glass screen. There it was. The logo, a stylized mountain peak in silver and slate gray. The address, 4400 Whispering Pines Drive. A dry, rasping laugh escaped my throat, sounding foreign in the empty bedroom. They had booked the Summit. They had no idea. How could they? I had bought the property 18 months ago under my LLC, Rosewood Holdings. I had spent the last year renovating it from a dilapidated A-frame into a multi-million-dollar luxury rental. I had handpicked the Italian marble for the kitchen island. I had chosen the expensive art Brenda was so worried my children would break. I had installed the smart lock system that I could control from my phone right here in this bed. I kept my business dealings strictly separate from my family. They knew I worked in real estate, but they assumed I was a glorified agent, showing suburban condos to young couples. They had no concept of the development firm I had built or the portfolio of vacation rentals I quietly managed. To them, I was just Rosie, the single mom, the struggling sister, the one who was doing okay, but never quite as brilliant as Patrick, the corporate consultant. I dialed Brenda back. I had to be sure. I had to give them one chance to fix this. Did you get the file? Brenda answered on the first ring, sounding breathless. I did, I said, my voice steadier now, fueled by a sudden surge of adrenaline. Mom, this place, the Summit, it looks very expensive. Oh, it is, she bragged, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Laura found it on a third-party site. It's normally booked out months in advance, but we snagged a cancellation. It cost a fortune, but Patrick is paying for half and I'm covering the rest. We really want to spoil him. Right, I said, gripping the sheet. And you're sure, absolutely sure, that I can't come? I can leave the kids with their dad. I can drive up separately. I don't want to be alone on New Year's, Mom. It was a lie. I wouldn't leave Kevin and Maya, but I needed to hear her say it again. I needed to measure the depth of the exclusion. Rosie, please, she groaned. Don't be dramatic, it's 3 days. And honestly, Laura feels that if you come, the dynamic shifts. You know how you two can be. She just wants sophistication. Can't you just be happy for your brother? He works so hard. I work hard too, Mom, I said softly. It's not a competition, she snapped. Look, I have to go. The dog sitter is here. We'll call you on New Year's Eve. She hung up again. I lowered the phone, looking at the screen until it went black. The sadness that had been weighing me down evaporated, replaced by a clarity that cut through the fever. They wanted sophistication. They wanted a luxury experience where they could pretend to be royalty, financed by my mother's retirement savings and Patrick's credit cards. They wanted a retreat where my children weren't welcome because they weren't curated enough. I looked at the PDF again. Check-in, December 30th, 3:00 p.m. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the headboard. The throbbing in my head was still there, but it was rhythmic now, like a war drum. They thought they were driving 3 hours north to a stranger's house. They thought they had secured a sanctuary where they could critique my life choices over wine without me there to defend myself. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. The owner always has a master key. To understand why this hurts so much, you have to understand the history. You have to understand that I have spent my entire life paving the road for Patrick to walk on. When our father died 10 years ago, I was the one who stepped up. I was 25, just starting my career, but I took over the estate paperwork because Mom couldn't handle the numbers. I paid for the funeral out of my savings because the life insurance was tied up in probate. Patrick was 22, finishing his master's degree. We all agreed, Brenda and I, that Patrick shouldn't be burdened. He has finals, Mom had said. He has such a bright future. Let's not distract him with grief. So I grieved for all of us. I managed the debts. Old the house. And when Patrick landed his big corporate consulting job, I cheered the loudest. I thought we were a team. I thought that when I went through my messy divorce 3 years ago, the favor would be returned. But when I needed help moving into a smaller apartment with 5-year-old twins, Patrick was on a business trip. When I needed a cosigner for my first investment property, before I made it big, Mom said she couldn't risk her liquidity, even though she had just bought Patrick a new Audi for his promotion. I built my empire in the shadows of their indifference. And then came Laura. Laura, my sister-in-law, entered the picture 4 years ago and immediately began rewriting the family narrative. She was a lifestyle curator, which, as far as I could tell, meant she posted photos of beige living rooms and $12 coffees on Instagram. She was beautiful in a polished, sharp-edged way, and she looked at my chaotic, joyful life with thin-lipped disdain. She was the one who started the whispers. "Rosie's kids are so spirited, aren't they?" she would say at Thanksgiving, wiping a microscopic speck of gravy from her white cashmere sweater. I suppose that's what happens when there isn't a strong father figure in the home. She never said it to my face, of course. She said it to Brenda. And Brenda, desperate to stay in the good graces of her son's glamorous wife, absorbed it all. Over the last 2 years, I had watched my mother morph into Laura's parrot. If Laura thought organic cotton was essential, suddenly Brenda was lecturing me on my polyester blends. If Laura thought children should be seen and not heard, Brenda started shushing Kevin and Maya whenever they laughed too loud. Laura was the architect of this trip. I knew it in my bones. I pulled up Instagram. I had a burner account I used to monitor tenant trends, and searched for Laura's handle, at Luxury with Laura. There it was, a story posted 20 minutes ago. It was a video of Laura holding up a glass of champagne, standing in her walk-in closet. The caption read, "Packing for a much-needed escape to the mountains. Snowclinking, can't wait to disconnect from the negativity and focus on family, wellness, and pure luxury. Private retreat, no kids allowed self-care." Negativity, that was me. No kids allowed, that was Kevin and Maya. I watched the video loop. Her smile was practiced, her excitement performative. She turned to the side, showing off a stack of designer luggage. In the background, I heard Patrick's voice. "Did you tell Rosie yet?" he asked, sounding annoyed. Laura rolled her eyes at the camera, a conspiratorial wink to her followers. "Handled it, babe, don't worry. This weekend is about us." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. They weren't just excluding me, they were celebrating it. They were turning my exclusion into content. I looked at the clock. It was 1:00 p.m. on Tuesday. They were leaving tomorrow morning. I sat up, throwing the covers off. The dizziness swirled, but I pushed it down. I wasn't sick anymore. I was furious. And fury, I had learned in the world of real estate, was a much better fuel than caffeine. I dialed my assistant, Sarah. "Hey Rosie, you sound awful," Sarah said immediately. "Are you calling to cancel the site visit?" "No," I said, my voice raspy but hard as steel. "I'm calling to change a reservation. Open the file for the summit. Block off the dates from December 30th to January 2nd. "Block them off," Sarah sounded confused. "But we have a confirmed guest." Let me check. A Brenda Miller? It's a high-value booking, Rosie. They paid the premium holiday rate." "I know," I said, walking into my bathroom and splashing cold water on my burning face. I looked at myself in the mirror, pale, dark circles, hair a mess. but my eyes were blazing. Don't cancel them. Just mark the property as owner-occupied for internal maintenance. And Sarah. Yes. Call the property manager up there, tell him I'm coming up early, and tell him to change the door codes. Today. The drive to the mountains usually takes 3 hours. I made it in 2.5, fueled by adrenaline and a thermos of black coffee that was doing a surprisingly good job of suppressing the lingering fatigue from my fever. Are we there yet? Leo asked from the backseat, his nose pressed against the cold glass. Almost, buddy, I said, catching his eye in the rearview mirror. Look at the trees, see how heavy the snow is? That means the sledding hill is going to be perfect. I thought Grandma said there wasn't room for us, Maya piped up, her voice small. She was perceptive for 8, too perceptive. She had heard me crying on the phone yesterday, even though I tried to hide it. Grandma made a mistake, I said carefully, gripping the steering wheel until the leather creaked. She didn't realize that the cabin belongs to us, so we're going to surprise her. Is she going to be mad? Maya asked. She may. HT be surprised, I corrected. But this is our house, we make the rules. We pulled up the winding driveway of the summit just as the winter sun was beginning its descent behind the peaks. The cabin was a masterpiece of modern rustic design, a structure of cedar and glass that jutted out over the valley floor, offering a panoramic view of the frozen landscape. I had bought it as a wreck, a foreclosure that had been sitting rotting for 3 years. I had poured my blood, sweat, and savings into this place. Every beam, every fixture, every pane of glass was a testament to the career I had built, while my family was busy looking down on me. I parked my truck, a heavy-duty Ford F-150 that I used for site visits, not the sensible sedan Brenda thought I drove, right in the center of the circular driveway. I wanted it to be the first thing they saw. We unloaded the bags. I punched in the master override code on the smart lock, 1989 hash, the year I was born, and the heavy timber door swung open. Whoa, Leo breathed, stepping into the foyer. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sunset perfectly, casting a golden glow over the open-concept living room. Go pick your rooms, I said, smiling as they took off running, their boots clomping on the hardwood I had refinished myself. Any room you want, even the one with the balcony. While the kids explored, claiming their territory in the adults-only sanctuary, I set up my command center at the kitchen island. I opened my laptop and logged into the property management backend. I needed to see exactly what I was dealing with. I pulled up the booking file for Brenda Miller. The notes from the guest, Laura undoubtedly, as Brenda struggled to send an email without typing in all caps, were nauseating. Guest request, please ensure all store-brand toiletries are removed and replaced with Aesop or Molten Brown. We require a late checkout of 2:00 p.m. Also, please confirm that the nearest neighbors are at least a mile away. We require absolute privacy for high-profile guests. High profile? I scoffed aloud. My brother was a mid-level consultant, and Laura was an influencer with fewer than 10,000 followers, half of whom were bots she'd paid for. I clicked on the billing tab. I wanted to see the breakdown. Brenda had said Patrick was paying for half. I scanned the ledger. Total cost, $5,200, holiday rate plus cleaning fee plus concierge surcharge. Payment method, Visa ending in 4490. I frowned. That was Brenda's card. I knew the last 4 digits by heart because I had set up her Amazon account for her. I scrolled down. There was no second card on file, no split payment. The entire amount had been charged to my mother's credit card 3 weeks ago. I pulled out my phone and opened the background check software I used for vetting potential long-term commercial tenants. It was a paid service, expensive but thorough. I typed in Laura Miller. I had never looked into my brother's finances before. It felt like an invasion of privacy, a line I shouldn't cross. But they had crossed the line first when they decided my children weren't good enough to breathe their air. The report generated in seconds. Leon's none, Judgments: 1 civil small claims unpaid vendor. Credit utilization: 92%. I raised an eyebrow. 92% utilization? That was dangerously high. I clicked on the employment history. Laura listed herself as CEO of LM Lifestyle, but the business entity was dissolved 6 months ago for failure to pay state franchise taxes. Then I looked up Patrick. His report was cleaner, but there was a recent inquiry from a debt consolidation firm. The picture was starting to form, jagged and ugly. They weren't just excluding us because we were loud. They were excluding us because this trip was a performance. They were using my mother's money to cosplay as the wealthy elite, likely to generate content for Laura's failing brand, all while hiding the fact that they were drowning in debt. "Mom," Leo yelled from the loft, "this TV is huge. Can we watch a movie?" "Yes," I called back. "Turn it up as loud as you want." I closed the laptop. I had the leverage. Now I just had to wait for the trap to spring. The snow began to fall harder around 4:00 p.m., thick flakes that blanketed the driveway in fresh white powder. Inside, the fire was roaring, the kids were drinking hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and the cabin smelled of pine and expensive cedar. At 4:15 p.m., headlights cut through the twilight at the bottom of the drive. My heart gave a painful thud against my ribs. This was it. I walked to the foyer and watched through the narrow side window. A sleek, black rental SUV crawled up the steep driveway. It hesitated near the top, the driver clearly confused by the presence of my massive, mud-splattered pickup truck blocking the entrance to the garage. They parked awkwardly on the side, the engine cutting out. I watched them emerge, first Patrick, looking tired and wary, and G, a coat that looked too thin for the weather. Then Brenda, bundled in a scarf, looking anxious. And finally Laura, stepping out in pristine white snow boots and a faux fur coat, looking like she was ready for a photo shoot. They gathered by the hood of the car, gesturing at my truck. "Who is that?" I heard Laura's voice, muffled by the glass but shrill. "I specifically requested a private driveway." "Maybe it's the cleaning crew," Patrick suggested, rubbing his hands together for warmth. "In a truck like that?" Laura scoffed. "That looks like a contractor. God, this is so unprofessional. Brenda, where is the code? Just get us inside, I'll call the management company and have them towed." I waited. I let them walk all the way up the timber stairs to the massive front porch. I let Brenda fumble with her phone, pulling up the email with the code. "It says 5544, Brenda muttered, punching the numbers into the keypad. The lock flashed red, beep beep beep. "Try it again," Laura snapped, tapping her foot. "You probably typed it wrong." Brenda tried again, beep beep beep, red light. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Laura sighed, pushing Brenda aside. "Let me do it." She punched the numbers in with aggressive force. Beep beep beep. "What is going on?" Laura groaned, turning to face the driveway. "This is ridiculous. We paid $5,000 for this." I unlocked the deadbolt from the inside. The heavy thunk of the metal sliding back made them all freeze. I opened the door. The look on their faces was worth every penny of the mortgage I paid on this place. Brenda's jaw literally dropped. Patrick blinked, taking a step back as if he'd seen a ghost. Laura just stared, her eyes narrowing into slits of confusion and instant fury. I leaned against the doorframe, holding a mug of tea, wearing my favorite oversized wool sweater and leggings. "Hey guys," I said, my voice calm, almost cheerful. "You're a little late. We've already started the fire." "Rosie," Brenda gasped, What are you doing here?" "I think the better question," Laura interjected, stepping forward and finding her voice, "is how the hell you got in here, and why is your truck in our driveway? We rented this place. Privately." "I know," I said, taking a sip of tea. "I saw the booking. The Summit, right? Lovely choice. It's my favorite property." "Your favorite?" Patrick started, looking from me to the house. "Rosie, did you follow us? Did you rent it out from under us to be petty?" "No, Patrick," I said, my gaze hardening. "I didn't rent it, I own it." "Silence," Absolute, heavy silence, broken only by the wind whistling through the pines. You, what? Brenda whispered. I own the summit, I repeated, gesturing to the beams above me. I bought it 2 years ago. I renovated it. I listed it. And imagine my surprise when I saw my own mother booking it for a peaceful retreat that explicitly excluded my children because they weren't sophisticated enough for my house. Laura let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You're lying. You sell condos in the suburbs, Rosie. You don't own a $3 million estate. You probably broke in. I'm calling the police. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Go ahead, I said, not moving. Call them. Ask them who holds the deed to 4400 Whispering Pines Drive. Ask them who pays the property taxes. It's Rosewood Holdings LLC. That's me. Rosie, Wood, Rosewood. Laura stopped dialing, her face paling slightly as the connection was made. So, I continued, looking at Brenda, whose eyes were filling with tears. You said peace was what you wanted. You said there wasn't enough room for my little ones. Well, looks like peace came early. For us. Because as the owner, I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone, especially tenants who insult the management. Rosie, please, Brenda stammered, stepping toward the door. It's freezing out here. Let us in. We can talk about this inside. I didn't move. I blocked the doorway with my body. I don't think so. You see, this is a curated space. It's very high-end, and I just don't think the vibe is right for people who lie to their family. This is illegal, Laura shrieked, her composure shattering completely. She stomped her boot on the porch decking. We have a confirmed reservation. We have a receipt. You can't just deny us entry because you're having a temper tantrum about not being invited. Actually, I can, I said coolly. Read the terms of service on the booking site. Clause 14, Section B. Owner reserves the right to cancel or revoke access at any time for emergency maintenance or personal use. I'm invoking personal use. We paid, Patrick shouted, finally finding his anger. He moved up the steps, standing next to his wife. We paid $5,000 for this, Rosie. You're stealing our money. The refund has already been processed, I lied, well, partially. I had initiated it, but it would take days to hit the bank. NK, you'll get your money back in 5-7 business days. You can use it to find a motel 6 down on the highway. I hear they have a pool. Mom, Patrick turned to Brenda, his voice cracking. Do something, tell her to stop this insanity. Brenda looked at me, her face a mask of misery. Rosie, please, this is New Year's, don't do this. I'm sorry we didn't invite you, okay? I'm sorry, but Patrick needs this. He's been so stressed. He's paid so much money for this trip. I held up a hand. Stop right there, Mom. I turned and walked back to the kitchen island, leaving the door open just enough so they could hear me, but not wide enough to invite them in. I grabbed the iPad I used for house controls and walked back to the threshold. You keep saying Patrick paid for this, I said, looking at my brother. I did, Patrick insisted. I paid my share. I tapped the screen and held it up. The brightness of the display illuminated the darkening porch. This is the invoice, Patrick, paid in full 21 days ago, one transaction. I pointed to the line item. Visa ending in 4490, that's Mom's card, the one I set up for her. Patrick frowned, squinting at the screen. What? No, I gave Laura the money. I transferred $2,500 to our joint account specifically for this booking. The air on the porch changed instantly. It grew colder, if that was possible. Brenda looked at Laura. Laura, you told me Patrick paid his half. You told me that's why we could afford the upgrade to the luxury package. You said Patrick insisted on treating me. Laura's face went from pale to a splotchy crimson. She crossed her arms defensively, looking away from them, staring out at the snow. It's complicated, okay? We have other expenses. The car lease, the credit cards. I used Patrick's money for bills. We needed this trip to get content so I can get new sponsors. It's an investment. So you lied? Brenda's voice trembled. It was the first time I had ever heard her direct that tone at Laura. You made me pay the full amount, and you told Patrick he paid, and you kept his money." "I didn't keep it," Laura snapped, turning on Brenda like a viper. "I used it to keep our lives afloat. Do you have any idea how much it costs to maintain the lifestyle Patrick expects? He doesn't make enough, he never has." "Hey," Patrick yelled, stepping between them. "Don't put this on me. You said the business was doing great. You said LM Lifestyle was profitable." "It's a brand, Patrick," Laura screamed. "It takes capital to build a brand." I leaned against the doorframe, watching the implosion. It was like watching a controlled demolition. I had planted the dynamite, but Laura had lit the fuse herself years ago. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice cutting through their shouting match. "Mom paid for the whole trip. Patrick thought he paid half. Laura pocketed Patrick's money to pay off debts she's been hiding. And the only reason you guys excluded me, the only reason my children aren't allowed inside, is because Laura needed a rich backdrop to trick sponsors into giving her money she doesn't have." They all fell silent. They stood there in the cold, the snow piling up on their shoulders, the ugly truth hanging between them like a fog. "That's about the size of it, isn't it?" I asked. "Rosie," Brenda said, her voice breaking. She looked old suddenly, tired and small. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the money." "But you knew about the exclusion, Mom," I said softly. "You knew you were leaving Leo and Maya behind. You knew you were hurting me. You just didn't care because you thought you were buying admission into their perfect life. Well, look at it. It's fake. It's all fake." "Please," Patrick said, his voice quiet now, defeated. "Rosie, it's freezing. Just let us in. We can figure this out. We can't drive back down the mountain tonight. The roads are getting bad." I looked at them. My mother shivering, my brother humiliated, my sister-in-law seething with impotent rage. "I have 2 spare bedrooms," I said, "and the couch." Laura's eyes lit up with triumph. She took a step forward. "But," I added, raising a finger, "there are conditions." "What conditions?" Laura spat. "1," I said, "Laura sleeps on the couch. No private suite for you. 2, you will not take a single photo or video inside this house. If I see one phone out recording, you're out in the snow. And 3." I looked at Brenda. "You're going to apologize to my children. Tonight. And you're going to tell them exactly why you tried to leave them behind." The silence inside the cabin was heavier than the snow piling up against the panoramic windows. I had allowed them entry, but I hadn't offered them comfort. I stood by the kitchen island, watching as my family, shivering, wet, and thoroughly demoralized, shuffled into the warmth of the home I had built. "Take your boots off at the door," I commanded. My voice cutting through the quiet. "The floors are imported French oak. I don't want salt stains." Laura glared at me, her lips blue, but she kicked off her designer boots with a petulant huff. Brenda looked around the great room, her eyes widening as she took in the details she had missed in the listing photos. The 20-foot vaulted ceilings, the custom stone fireplace where Leo and Maya were currently roasting marshmallows, the sheer scale of the wealth I had accumulated while she was busy buying Patrick groceries. "This place," Brenda whispered, unbuttoning her coat with trembling hands. "Rosie, this is incredible." "It's an asset," I said plainly. "Something you build when you don't spend your life trying to look rich for strangers." "Where do I sleep?" Laura demanded, her voice shrill. She was clutching her phone like a lifeline, her thumb hovering over the screen, itching to break my rule. "The couch," I pointed to the oversized leather sectional facing the fire. "There are blankets in the bin. Don't scratch the leather." "I am not sleeping on a couch," she hissed. "Patrick, tell her, this is insane. We are guests." "You aren't guests," I corrected. "Guests are invited. You are refugees from a disaster of your own making." Patrick didn't defend her. He was standing by the window, staring out at the darkness, his shoulders slumped. The revelation on the porch, that Laura had stolen his money, had broken something inside him. He looked like a man waking up from a long, expensive coma. "I'm hungry," Leo announced, breaking the tension. He held up a sticky, burnt marshmallow. "Can we have pizza?" "We're having stew," I said, walking to the stove where a large Dutch oven had been simmering all afternoon. Beef and barley. Simple, hearty, not curated, but it feeds the soul. I set the table. I laid out 5 places. The clinking of silverware was the only sound. When we sat down, the dynamic had shifted so violently it was almost palpable. Usually, at family gatherings, Laura held court at the head of the table, criticizing the wine and humble bragging about her latest collaboration. Tonight, she sat on the edge of the bench, looking small and cornered. "So," I said, ladling stew into bowls, "let's talk about the itinerary. Since you're here, and since you paid, well, Mom paid for a luxury retreat, we should clear the air. Mom, you mentioned Patrick needed peace. Is this peaceful enough for you?" Patrick looked up from his bowl. His eyes were red. "Rosie, stop. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know she took the money." "I believe you didn't know about the money," I said, sitting down and taking a sip of wine. "But you knew about the disrespect. You knew Laura didn't want my kids here, and you went along with it." "I just wanted one weekend without fighting," Patrick admitted, his voice cracking. "Laura said, she said if you came, it would be drama. She said your kids were out of control." I looked at Leo and Maya. They were eating quietly, whispering to each other about the snow. They were well-behaved, kind, intelligent children. "My kids aren't the problem, Patrick," I said softly. "The problem is that your wife needs to feel superior to someone to validate her own existence, and I was the easiest target." "You're just jealous," Laura spat, unable to help herself. She slammed her spoon down. "You've always been jealous of us, of our life, of the fact that Brenda loves Patrick more." The room went dead silent. Brenda gasped, covering her mouth. "Laura," Patrick shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "It's true," Laura screamed, standing up. She grabbed her phone, ignoring my rule. "You think you're so special because you bought a cabin? You're still just the single mom who couldn't keep a husband. I have a brand. I have followers who look up to me. I have influence." She held the phone up, hitting the Go Live button on Instagram. I saw the ring light flash on her screen. "I'm going to show them," she announced, her voice pitching up into her fake influencer tone. "Hey guys, you won't believe what's happening. We're at the summit, but the owner, my psychotic sister-in-law, is literally holding us hostage. She scammed us." I didn't move to stop her. I just leaned back and smiled. "Let her film," I told Patrick, who was rising to grab the phone. "Let her." Laura panned the camera around the room, landing on me. "There she is. Look at her. She stole our vacation." I looked directly into the lens. "Hi, everyone. I'm Rosie. I own the building. And Laura is currently upset because I exposed the fact that she stole $2,500 from her husband to pay for a vacation she couldn't afford because her business was dissolved 6 months ago for tax fraud." Laura froze. The comments on her screen must have been flying because her eyes darted back and forth rapidly. "What?" Patrick said, standing up slowly. "What did you just say?" "Dissolved," I repeated. Looking at my brother. "I ran a background check before you arrived. LM Lifestyle isn't a company, Patrick. It's a liability. The state shut it down in June. She hasn't made a profit in 3 years. She's been living off your credit cards and Mom's retirement." Laura turned the phone away, ending the stream with a fumble of fingers, but the damage was done. The recording was out there. "Is that true?" Patrick asked, his voice dangerously quiet. He walked around the table toward her. "She's lying," Laura shrieked, backing up toward the fireplace. "She's lying to ruin us." "Open your banking app," Patrick demanded, holding out his hand. "Right now, open the business account." I can't. The signal is bad," Laura stammered. "The signal is fiber optic," I pointed out helpfully. 10 gigabits per second. It's the fastest internet on the mountain." Patrick snatched the phone from her hand. He punched in a passcode. "You changed it," he muttered. "What's the passcode, Laura?" "Patrick, please, not in front of your mother," Laura begged, tears finally spilling over. Real tears this time, tears of terror. 0000, I guessed. It's always the default. Patrick typed it in. It unlocked. He tapped the banking icon. I watched his face as he scrolled. It was a tragedy in 3 acts. First confusion, then shock, and finally, a deep, hollow devastation. "It's gone," he whispered. "The savings, the house fund, the emergency account, it's all overdrafted." He looked up at Laura, holding the phone screen toward her. $30,000, Laura, where is it?" "I had to maintain appearances," Laura sobbed, collapsing onto the nearest chair. "For the brand, you don't understand. I was going to make it back. One big sponsorship, that's all I needed. This trip was supposed to be the launch pad." "You stole from us," Brenda said, her voice shaking. She stood up from the table, her face pale. "You stole from my son, and you made me pay for it." "I did it for us," Laura wailed. "No," Patrick said. He sounded exhausted. He sounded like the brother I used to know before she got her claws into him. "You did it for you. You did it for strangers on the internet." He turned to me. "Rosie, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "I know," I said gently. "I can't stay here," Laura said, wiping her face, trying to regain some shred of dignity. "I won't be humiliated like this. I'm leaving." "You don't have a car," I reminded her. "Patrick rented the SUV. His name is on the contract." "I don't care," she screamed. "I'll walk, I'll call an Uber." "There are no Ubers up here," I said, "and it's 10 degrees below zero." "I am not staying in this house with her." She pointed a trembling finger at me. Patrick looked at his wife. He looked at the phone in his hand, then at the empty bank accounts, and finally at me and our mother. "Here," Patrick said, tossing the keys to the rental SUV onto the table. They slid across the wood and stopped in front of Laura. "Patrick," Laura blinked. "Take the car," he said. "Go back to the city. Pack your things. Be out of the apartment by the time I get back on the 2nd. You're kicking me out," Laura gasped. "On New Year's." "No," Patrick said, turning his back on her to look at my children. "You kicked yourself out when you decided my family wasn't good enough for you." Laura looked around the room. No one moved. No one spoke. Even Brenda, her biggest defender, looked away. She grabbed the keys. She grabbed her coat. And without another word, she stormed out the front door into the snow. We heard the engine start, the tires spin on the ice, and then the fade of taillights down the mountain. The silence that followed Laura's departure was different. It wasn't heavy or tense. It was the silence of a fever breaking. Patrick sank onto the couch, the leather one Laura had refused to sit on, and put his head in his hands. Leo and Maya, sensing the shift, quietly moved from the table to the rug, bringing their marshmallows with them. I walked over to the sidebar and poured 3 glasses of the good whiskey, the stuff I kept locked away for closing million-dollar deals. I handed one to Mom, one to Patrick, and kept one for myself. "She spent it all," Patrick whispered into his hands. "Every dime. I've been working 60-hour weeks for 3 years, Rosie. I thought we were saving for a house. I thought we were building something." "You can rebuild," I said, sitting on the coffee table in front of him. "You're smart, Patrick, you're resilient, and you're not alone anymore." Patrick looked up, his eyes wet. "I haven't been a brother to you, not for a long time." "No, you haven't," I agreed. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. "You let her isolate you. You let her treat me like I was beneath you." "I was weak," he admitted. "It was easier to just agree with her than to fight the constant criticism. I'm sorry, Rosie. I'm so sorry I missed everything. The kids growing up, your success." He looked around the room. "You did this all by yourself." "I did," I said, pride swelling in my chest. "While you guys were worrying about appearances, I was building equity." "I'm proud of you," he said, and for the first time in years, I believed him. Then there was a shifting of fabric. Brenda stood up from her chair and walked over to where the twins were playing. She looked older tonight, her vanity stripped away by the shock of the evening. She knelt down on the rug, her knees cracking slightly. "Leo, Maya," she said softly. The twins looked up wide-eyed. They were wary of her. They had learned to be. "Yeah, Grandma," Leo asked. "I need to tell you something," Brenda said, her voice wavering. She reached out and took their small hands in hers. "I made a very big mistake. A terrible mistake. About the cabin, Maya asked innocently. About everything, Brenda said, tears tracking through her foundation. I let someone tell me that you weren't welcome. I let someone tell me that there wasn't room for you. But that was a lie. There is always room for you. You are the most important people in this family. And I am so sorry that I didn't fight for you. It's okay, Grandma, Leo said, shrugging with the infinite forgiveness of a child. We're here now, and Mom has the best house anyway. Brenda laughed, a wet, choking sound, and pulled them into a hug. I watched them, feeling the hard knot of anger in my chest finally begin to loosen. It wouldn't be perfect overnight. There were years of neglect to undo, but the toxin had been removed. Laura was gone. The next 2 days were strange, quiet, and healing. We didn't do luxury activities. We didn't go to the expensive ski resort or the 5-star spa. We stayed in the cabin. We played board games. Patrick taught Leo how to build a proper snow fort. I showed Mom the blueprints for my next development, and for the first time, she actually asked questions about the zoning laws and cap rates, listening with genuine respect. On New Year's Eve, just before midnight, we stood on the massive deck overlooking the valley. The world below was a sea of darkness, punctuated by the distant lights of the town. Patrick's phone buzzed. He checked it and sighed. Lawyer, he said. She's already filing. She wants alimony. Let her try, I said, clinking my glass against his. I know a shark of a divorce attorney. I used him for my divorce. He eats influencers for breakfast. I might need a loan, Patrick said with a grimace, just to get the retainer. I know a guy, I smiled. Or rather, a gal. She runs a pretty successful real estate holding company. I hear she gives family discounts, provided the family behaves. Patrick laughed, a genuine deep sound that echoed off the trees. Thanks, Rosie. 10 seconds, Leo yelled from inside, watching the ball drop on the TV. 10, 9, 8. We counted down together. Me, the black sheep who became the shepherd. Patrick, the golden child who had lost his shine but found his footing. And Mom, who finally learned that gold paint chips, but solid oak lasts forever. Happy New Year, we shouted as the clock struck 12. Fireworks exploded in the distance, tiny bursts of color against the vast night sky. I breathed in the cold, sharp air. It tasted like pine. It tasted like winter. But mostly, it tasted like victory. Peace hadn't come early, not really. It had come right on time. And this time, I held the keys.